In this module, we're going to talk about unlearning behaviors. So now we'll talk to, the mind and mental models. This is somewhat redundant, but it's re-emphasizing things. This is, by the way, Jez Humble. He's a famous DevOps guy. And if you get a chance to look him up on his podcast and things, he was the co-author of, I think, the continuous delivery book. Actually, I took that book and implemented a course around it at one point for the DevOps Institute, and with his permission, of course. Anyway, having a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. So clearly you want a growth mindset. You don't want to sort of be fixed in your ways too much. I often say the half-life of an engineer's knowledge, especially in the DevOps world, used to be like 5 years, not long ago, maybe 10 years ago. It's evolved, it's accelerated. I'd say today in Silicon Valley, especially, the half-life of knowledge is like less than 2 years, maybe 18 months. So in other words, half of what you know today that's very important will still be very important in 18 months, and there'll be new things. I can give you some examples. For example, today, as we do this recording, the rise of generative AI has become now table stakes, whereas even two years ago it was a good idea being explored, but not essential, and now it's essential, right? 2 years before that, things like observability were a good idea, but now they're like assuming that you're already doing that. And I'm sure, I have a feeling this coming year it's going to be agentic AI, and then maybe quantum computing. But there's so many things that constantly evolve, and these things affect people, process, and technology. Being a lifelong learner, I can relate to that. I'm an IEEE lifer. Like I literally have a lifetime membership, an IEEE member for 50 years. And part of that is being a lifetime learner. You never really stop learning. And if you do, it's kind of boring anyway. So you might as well have a plan for learning, not just, I always set it's kind of a 6-month goal on picking a new topic and try to not necessarily perfect it, but definitely feel I can get comfortable with it, if not fully proficient. Think differently requires acting differently. So don't expect to do the same old and get, a different result. If you believe your brain can grow, hopefully it doesn't go. I'm wondering if mine's going to go soon. You behave differently. So, yeah, so again, it's all about being open to growth and pursuing growth and learning. DevOps is an organizational mindset that enables continuous delivery, a focus on everybody working together to improve development performance measures, such as throughput, while at the same time increasing stability and reducing mean time to restore service. So those are some of the key metrics that we talked about, the DORA metrics ideas. And certainly DevOps has a lot to do with that. So, and Jez is a strong proponent of that as well. I think he's currently a professor in California University, maybe Berkeley, I'm not sure, but he's definitely still active, but more as a professor. Okay, mindset and mental models. So this is continuing. The diagram on the right is just a cute way of showing that, right? A lot of ideas in your head, which can vector off into a lot of different actions and thoughts. So how do we understand the world is kind of your mental model. You're going to have some kind of picture of how things work that you've developed over time, kind of like the bicycle riding algorithm or approach. How we simplify complexity. This is interesting. I don't know, I'm probably a weird learner, but I remember in school, if I couldn't boil down a whole course down to like one sheet of paper, like a cheat sheet, I didn't really feel like understood it. So it was a matter of taking all the complexities of an entire course and reducing it down to a summary page. Then I really felt I understood it, and I usually got very good marks because of that. But unfortunately, I often didn't feel I understood it as we were going through the class. It wasn't until I reduced it to a summary. Different people work differently, but that was kind of my mental model and mindset around trying to excel in school. So build a representation of how things work. whether it's a diagram on one sheet of paper or some other approach. The more models, the better. In other words, the brain tends to remember models more than you will remember all the minutia, and having the model you can then organize in your own head, all of those details, and then document and share your mental models differently. Certainly sharing mental models. I see on LinkedIn often people share like cheat sheets, and that is very handy and helpful. So certainly sharing them is valuable, sharing them with your team. And you can have different kinds of mental models, and certainly you should be accepting of others as well from other people. This is a pretty busy looking chart, but basically the idea is that there are a lot of ways in which, we as humans have biases. We're not going to go through every one, but you can get the idea. The anchoring effect, where you're sort of fixed on some way of doing things, you're anchored to that. There's availability heuristic, where you're going to give favor to things that are readily available and not search out for new ideas necessarily, is a kind of a cognitive bias. The bandwagon effect, where everybody's kind of going in one direction and they're all on a bandwagon, and you tend to follow along rather than, even if you know that there's some reason why maybe you shouldn't do that. General beliefs, sometimes things are not based on facts. You just have a general belief and you'll follow it even if the facts tell you otherwise, which often doesn't work out to be a good idea. Blind spot, so you're not looking in all directions. You kind of focus in on a subset of the available information. That can be bad. Clustering, where you get a lot of data in one area and therefore you give it higher priority, but that doesn't necessarily mean it should be higher priority. Anyhow, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you get the idea. You might want to spend some time, stop the video, and do a search for these things if you want to explore all of them. But they're all real and they're valuable. You can categorize these different biases. Some of them are financial biases, how you're going to invest and spend money. Social biases, how you're going to interact with others. Short-termisms, what are you going to do, like higher priority, shorter term. Failure to estimate, where you are not taking the time to really understand things, so you go ahead without proper estimating. In general, a cognitive bias is a systematic pattern of deviation from the norm or rationality judgment. Okay, this is literally a one slide neuroscience chart, which is a whole career study by itself. But just reiterating that the brain is plastic, that fear causes an avoidance response, as we talked about before. People tend to shy away from things. That impulse is sometimes stronger than being attracted to something. So the fear effect is often, overcomes even your courage if it's strong enough. So trying something new may require courage, but the fear may prevent you from exercising that courage. Rewards and novelty create an approach response, which I generally favor, but as a leader, you really have to be, deliberate about setting up rewards and creating, novelty and interest. That's, in my mind, one of the most important roles of a leader. Try to avoid avoidance and fear and punishments, but instead set up systems of reward and recognition and make things interesting. The practice kata, which, the Japanese word kata essentially means practice. Automation in the work in the brain. So repeating things. The third way of DevOps talks about that repetition is the prerequisite to mastery, and it's certainly true. Just because somebody's demonstrated something once doesn't mean they know it and they're practicing it. You need to have ongoing practice. Just one experiment, even if it's a successful one, won't change your culture, your process, or your tools. You're really going to have to, keep repeating and trying and building on it to get it to be part of your so-called cognitive bias, or I call muscle memory. And then mirror neuron response tells us that enthusiasm is contagious, which is interesting, right? There's something going on there that I don't know understand us, but there's this idea that enthusiasm, when other people see when you see other people excited, you tend to get excited. I don't know how that actually works inside the brain, but it's certainly true, and I've seen it in action. It's kind of like when you're yawning, other people start yawning and everybody starts to get tired. There's some human connection there at a kind of a higher level almost, but it's true. And you should be aware of these things as a leader because they have real effects.